Hi everyone, my name's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a video that I'm kind of bummed to need to be doing. As a lot of you that have been following my channel for a while know, I've been trying to read The Wheel of Time. When I first started watching BookTube, I knew next to nothing about the adult fantasy genre as a whole. Basically, I knew Game of Thrones from the TV show and that was kind of it. I was never really immersed in that world. No one I knew was reading that kind of stuff. So I just didn't know, I didn't even know Wheel of Time existed. And when I started watching BookTube, as many people who newly discover BookTube find, they find a lot of the really big booktubers. So I saw Daniel Green talking about Wheel of Time all the time. And I then found a few other booktubers that read them and either liked them or didn't. And I decided I wanted to give them a try. It took me a while to actually start it because there's like 14 books or whatever, and that's just daunting. So I started them. I read the first one, thought it was eh. I read the second one and enjoyed it more than the first. And then the third one I absolutely despised. I thought it was so boring. And then I read the fourth one and was back to eh. And then I read the fifth one. I read half of the fifth one and I just decided like enough's enough. Like I was not enjoying up to that point enough for me to continue through what everyone calls the slog. Like everyone just says that they get really slow later on in the series until the Brandon Sanderson ones or until the last one that Robert Jordan wrote. And I'm just like, if I'm already not enjoying it that much, why should I put myself through that? Like I just wasn't feeling it. So in this video, I kind of want to break down why I've decided to DNF The Wheel of Time. I want to preface this video by saying that I know this is a very well-loved series, and I'm not trying to say that it is bad. I'm just trying to explain what didn't work for me and what I didn't enjoy about it. This is all very subjective. So if you love Wheel of Time, like, great. I wish I did too. Like, I never want to go into books and not like them. So this is all just my opinion. These are not objectively bad books. They just didn't work for me. So like I was saying, the only one that I really enjoyed, and enjoyed as a loose term, is probably The Great Hunt. The Great Hunt is where we kind of branched off from like the setup of The Eye of the World. And we kind of got a little bit more lore, we got a little bit more magic, we got to know the characters a little better. I was enjoying it enough to keep going. The third one I really didn't like because the entire plot was focused on basically all of the characters from The Great Hunt all traveling for the whole book. And they were all traveling to the same place, but they didn't know they were all traveling to the same place. And then that last chunk where they finally get to where they're going, I actually did enjoy enough to be like, okay, fine, I'll read the fourth one. But the majority of the book was just travel, and it was just not engaging to me. So I'm going to kind of basically break down all of the different parts of this book that didn't work for me. So I'm going to try to keep it from becoming like just a big rant review of what I've read of The Wheel of Time, but I apologize if that's kind of how it comes off. I'm just trying to show why this series is just not for me. So first, I kind of want to dive into the deep end and talk about the main thing that bothered me in this book, which I think is the same for many people, and that is gender in general in The Wheel of Time. The entire magic system is based on gender. So there's basically like one magic, and then part of it can be used by women and part of it can be used by men. However, the part that can be used by men basically makes men go mad and commit atrocities. Like that's basically the gist. Women that do magic are called Aes Sedai, and they have their own like city where they basically govern all magic users or something. And if they find a man that can channel this power, then they gentle him, which just means they take the magic out of him, which in and of itself sometimes can go poorly, but that's another thing. So the entire magic system is based on gender. And you might think like, wow, well, if women have all the power, what a like forward-thinking book. but it was still incredibly misogynistic so much of the time in the book. So many of the strongest female characters in this book still would like be completely derailed by one attractive man, or so much of their plotting and scheming still revolved around a man that they were attracted to or had an interest in or whatever. For example, I don't want to get into too many spoilers in this video, but Nynaeve, who is also, if I'm pronouncing names wrong or any terms wrong, I apologize. So Nynaeve has kind of like a love interest, and she's probably one of the strongest female characters from what I've read in the books. And a lot of the time, she'll be like she's a lot of times the leader of whoever she's with at the time, but she still will like, there's like this dream realm they can go to. And when she's there, a lot of the times, like in this dream realm, if you think it, you can see it. So like a lot of the times people's clothes will change or their setting will change. And every time a woman goes there, they change into something like scantily clad, and they're like so embarrassed, but then they're like, oh, but what if blah, blah, blah saw me in this? And it's like, what? And that happened to Nynaeve many times. Like, she'd be like, oh, what if he saw me in this scandalous outfit? And I'm like, you have a very clear goal of trying to keep the world from ending. And you go into this dream world and that's what you think of. And like, again, I understand that like, we are multifaceted. The world is falling down around us outside in real life, and I'm sitting here making a booktube video. So sure. But I have also not been tasked with being the one to save the world. So it was just frustrating to me that so much of the women in this book's attentions were always on men and how men are perceiving them and things along those lines. We also got many times where it was just like very obvious, like characters would say like, oh, she's a woman, so she can't do the heavy lifting kind of thing. Like it was just very frequently brought up that women are physically weaker than men and men have to do all the hard work, and that was frustrating. And then so much of the interactions that happen and so much of the internal dialogue between so many of these characters is just like, I don't know why they did that. It must be because they're a woman, or vice versa. It must be because they're a man. Like, just basically the complete cluelessness of the other gender, and that's what they attribute every confusing thing to, is just so wild. And then kind of segueing off of that, less about the gender dynamics of the series, character interactions in general are just buck wild. Like, people will get mad about like next to nothing. Like all of a sudden a character will just be mad at another character over like the smallest thing or maybe nothing. And it's like, wait, what? Like so much of the character interactions just felt so unrealistic. And so it made it to where I just wasn't connecting with any of the characters. Like if the end of book 5 ended with, and then a fireball came and destroyed the whole planet, I would have been like, cool. Like I would not have felt any sort of way about all these people because there was not one single character I could connect to or feel empathy to or anything. They all just felt so unrealistic. They didn't feel like anything. It's hard to explain. That just all of the interactions that people had felt so weird and not how people actually interact with each other. And so it was just kind of off-putting. Another thing that bothered me in a lot of these books was the pacing. Like I said, the entire third book was just paced so wildly. And that happens in many of the books. There will be some really great action or something along those lines. And then it like grinds to a halt and there's travel again. Or we switch POVs and it's like a really boring POV. So a lot of the times the pacing just felt really weird. Another thing that really bothered me, which I think is like probably the second biggest reason I don't think I'm going to continue with the series, is Robert Jordan's writing style. So much of his writing style is so repetitive. There's like so many characters, and so he tries to distinguish these characters by key characteristics, which that's totally fine. I get that. But it was so repetitive, like Nynaeve pulling on her braid. Like that is like the key example, the one that everyone talks about. And it was just so annoying. Like, it was constant. There was that kind of stuff throughout the entire books, like all 4.5 of the books I read. So much of his writing style was just very repetitive, like having people not understand each other, Nynaeve tugging her braid. There was so many other things that would just, each character had this one thing that they would just do over and over and over, or they would think over and over, and it was just really frustrating. Now, I will say there were parts of the books that I did really enjoy. They just weren't enough to keep me interested in the overall story. And it was almost always like some sort of lore exploration. Again, without going into too many spoilers, in the 4th book, Rand and Matt go into this other world kind of thing. They go into like this abandoned city. And there's a lot of magic, and it's very cool. You get this really, really awesome and well-written sequence of Rand going through the different parts of this exploration he's doing. And it is so cool to read. And then there's another point where Nynaeve fights one of the bad guys. I don't want to get into details. And that whole scene was really well written and really cool and really engaging. And those few key scenes were like, again, really interesting. I was getting invested in the lore. I still didn't feel super invested in the characters, but the lore was really cool and the descriptions were really vivid and well written. And I was just so upset that there was not more of those. Like, those are the only 2 even coming to mind off the top of my head. And I was just really upset because those key scenes were so fun and so cool for me, and we hardly got any. And so it was frustrating because it was very obvious Robert Jordan had it in him to write a cool bit, a cool scene, a cool fight sequence, and he just wasn't doing it for a lot of it. And so much of what was going on was just not interesting. I know some of the spoilers for things that happen later on in the series, and they sound so far-fetched and uninteresting, and I just have decided these aren't for me. I couldn't put it in me to care about the characters or the plot or the world. The few scenes I did really, really enjoy were not enough to keep me reading these long, long books of so much stuff that I wasn't enjoying. So ultimately, I just don't think this series is for me, which again is totally fine if you love this series, because that's awesome. Like, we read to love books. So if you love this series, I'm very happy for you, because I wish I did. I have heard that as you get later in the series, like the last Robert Jordan book and then the 3 Brandon Sanderson books, I've heard that those are really good. But again, I just don't see myself reading like 5 more books that I don't enjoy to just read those. And these aren't like quick reads either. They're huge. Like, these books are so big, and I don't want to spend my time reading books that I'm not really enjoying when there are so many books out there that I want to read that I think I will enjoy more. So I'm going to prioritize those, and maybe one day in the future I'll try to come back to Wheel of Time. I'm not going to say never, but for right now, I'm putting this series down. I'm not going to continue. These just really aren't working for me. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry again if that came off a little ranty. I just felt like I owed it to my viewers to explain in detail why I wasn't going to continue this series, because again, I don't think it is a bad series for everyone. Like, every book or every series has readers. Like, it will work for someone. It just didn't work for me, and I wanted to get it out there of what didn't work for me and why I'm not continuing. I hope this made sense. I hope that this explained accurately what didn't work for me in the series. And I hope if you haven't read this series and you're watching this without having tried it, at least give it a try, because maybe you'll like it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below how far you've gotten Wheel of Time, if at all, if you liked it. Just let me know your general thoughts on the Wheel of Time. Because I know a lot of people love it and a lot of people don't. So let me know down below what works for you in the Wheel of Time or what doesn't, or if you haven't read it yet. If you really like my content, please hit the notification bell to be notified every time I post new videos. As always, your support means the world to me, and until next time, thank you guys. you.